Last year, a major bank watched over $250 million just kind of vanish into thin air.
Yeah, $262 million.
Just gone. And, the most shocking part wasn't some highly sophisticated nation-state zero-day exploit or anything. The attackers literally walked right through the front door.
They really did. And the bank's top-tier authentication security essentially held the door open for them.
Right.
Because mechanically speaking, the attackers presented the exact right keys. I mean, it looked like a completely legitimate entrance.
Welcome to another episode of the MemcycoFM show. Today we are diving into a massive, heavily exploited blind spot in enterprise digital security.
A really big one.
Yeah. And if you are a CISO listening right now, you know that we usually expect our security posture to have clean architectural lines. You have your firewalls here, your endpoint detection over there, and your identity management securing the core.
Right. It's all nicely categorized.
Exactly. It's categorized. But when you step into the world of digital impersonation and account takeover, those clean lines just completely disintegrate.
They blur so much because attackers have realized that the most vulnerable part of your infrastructure isn't, it isn't actually your infrastructure at all.
Right.
It's the unmonitored space between your brand's public presence and your internal account security. And so that is the muddy water we are clearing up today.
Absolutely.
As two Memcyco employees who spend our days looking at this specific threat vector, our mission for this deep dive is to completely dismantle the traditional silos between brand impersonation and account takeover risk.
And I want to set the tone right out of the gate for every CISO tuning in. We are not here to do the standard cybersecurity fear-mongering routine.
Oh, please no.
Right. You get enough of that from every vendor pitch. This is actually an incredibly exciting opportunity.
It really is.
By simply connecting the dots between external impersonation signals and internal login data, your teams can stop these attacks long before the final login attempt ever happens.
Exactly.
But to get to that empowering solution, we have to look at the artificial divide in our workflows that attackers are currently just, driving a truck through.
Yeah, we have to look at the massive disconnect between brand protection teams and fraud teams. I mean, to understand this, just look at how a typical enterprise is structured.
Okay, let's break that down.
So you have a brand protection team, or maybe it falls under legal or marketing.
Sure.
And their day-to-day existence is hyper-focused on finding fake domains, spoofed websites, malicious search ads, and managing these endless soul-crushing takedown queues.
Oh, man, the takedown queues.
Right. Their whole mandate is protecting the company's reputation and intellectual property.
Right. And then sitting in a completely different department using entirely different dashboards, you have your fraud and security teams.
Yeah.
And they are laser focused on login risk, credential misuse, anomalous IP addresses, unauthorized account access. I mean, they live and breathe inside the authentication logs.
They do. And there is just this massive canyon between those two departments.
Yeah.
And here is the realization that is fundamentally shifting the industry right now. A fake banking page, a spoofed airline loyalty portal, a counterfeit retail site.
Those are not just reputational damage issues.
Exactly. They're not merely trademark infringements. They are the initial delivery layer for credential harvesting.
Right.
Attackers do not spend time building pixel-perfect fake websites just to annoy your marketing team.
No, of course not.
They build them to steal valid credentials from your real customers.
And the sheer scale of this delivery layer is just mind-blowing when you pull back and look at the numbers.
Oh, it's staggering.
We are looking at the latest data from the APWG, the Anti-Phishing Working Group, and in the second quarter of 2025 alone, they tracked 11,130,393 phishing attacks.
Wow, over 1 million.
Over 1 million attacks in a single 3-month window. That was a 13% jump from Q1, and they are projecting a staggering 3.8 million attacks in total for 2025.
I mean, let those numbers sink in for a moment.
Oh.
When you have nearly 4 million fake delivery layers being spun up in a single year, a manual takedown process is mathematically doomed.
It's impossible.
It is a game of whack-a-mole where the mole has a supercomputer.
Right.
By the time the brand team spots the fake domain, sends the cease and desist letter, and finally convinces some, bulletproof hosting provider halfway across the world to pull the plug,
The damage is already done.
the credentials have been harvested, and the attackers have moved on to a new domain.
I was actually looking at a spoofed airline site just the other week. I got a text saying my points were expiring. Clicked the link, and the page looked flawless.
I bet.
The only giveaway was a single transposed letter in the URL. And it got me thinking about this exact disconnect. It's like we have two world-class security teams protecting a bank.
Okay, I like this analogy.
But one team is only watching the vault door inside, and the other team is a mile down the road staring at a counterfeit detour sign, trying to figure out how to take the sign down.
Meanwhile, the bank robbers are just standing by the detour sign, collecting people's vault keys, and then walking casually past the first security team straight to the vault.
Exactly.
The attacker bypasses the intent of both teams simply by operating in the blind spot between them.
So let's trace that path. Because instead of just talking about the abstract theory, I think we should look at how an attacker actually moves through that blind spot step by step, transforming a brand issue into an account takeover.
Yeah, let's walk through the chain. There's really 5 stages to this exposure to ATO chain.
Okay, lay it out for us.
Imagine a customer sitting on their couch, scrolling on their phone, and they see a sponsored search ad for your company. That is stage 1, the asset appearance.
So the fake asset goes live.
Right. A malicious ad or a spoofed social profile imitating your brand. Now, what your internal teams usually see here is just the spoofed domain itself, assuming they even catch it.
Which is a big if.
A very big if.
Yeah.
And what they miss entirely is whether your actual customers are actively being exposed to it.
Okay, so that brings us to stage 2. The user interacts with it. They click the ad.
Exactly. The user interaction. They think they're doing something completely normal, like checking their balance or paying a bill, and they reach that fake experience.
Now, maybe your security teams get some general traffic alerts pointing to suspicious infrastructure, but they have zero visibility into which specific individual users are interacting with that fake site in real time.
Which brings us to the critical pivot point. Stage 3. Credential harvesting.
Ah, right.
The user is on the fake site, and the fake flow prompts them to log in. It captures their username, their password, and crucially, their one-time passwords.
And your security teams might subscribe to threat intel feeds that give them stolen credential risk scores later on, days later.
But they lack the immediate visibility to know that specific, freshly stolen data is now perfectly usable against your real site.
Because it's happening completely off premises. The interaction is happening entirely on the attacker's proxy infrastructure.
That is the danger. And once the attacker has those credentials in hand, they pivot to stage 4, credential reuse.
So they turn around and attempt access on your legitimate real site.
Yes.
But wait, I have to push back here, though. Let's look at this mechanically from the perspective of the fraud engine guarding our real site.
Okay.
If the attacker gets to stage 4, they arrive at our front door, and they have the valid username, the correct password, and a freshly intercepted OTP from the user.
Yeah.
Doesn't that just look like a completely normal, legitimate login to our authentication systems? How is the system supposed to know the difference if all the math checks out?
That right there is the million-dollar question, and you've hit on the exact reason these attacks are so successful.
Really?
Mechanically, you are absolutely right. It looks like a perfectly valid login. The username's correct. The password matches the hash. The OTP is valid because it was just intercepted in real time.
Right.
If you are only evaluating the authentication request itself, it passes every single test you throw at it.
And that leads directly to the final phase, stage 5. ATO escalation. Full account takeover.
The fraudster gets in, the funds are transferred, the loyalty points are drained, the sensitive data is exfiltrated.
And it might eventually appear to the fraud team days later as a suspicious login or an unknown device alert, but by then, the money is gone. The enterprise completely missed the full chain from fake brand exposure to account risk.
Exactly. And answering your question about why a compromised login looks perfectly normal requires us to fundamentally rethink when our security controls are making their decisions.
The timing.
Yes, it is not a lack of tools. I mean, modern enterprises have incredible fraud prevention tools. The core problem is a timing dilemma.
Let's unpack this timing dilemma, because looking at the research, this is the paradigm shift that a CISO really needs to internalize. It changes everything about how you view your architecture.
Think about the attack we just traced. There are 4 distinct windows of timing. First, there is the exposure window, when customers are out there interacting with the fake brand assets.
Right.
Second, the credential capture window, when the passwords and OTPs are physically being collected by the impersonation infrastructure.
Got it.
Third is the credential reuse window, when attackers are actively replaying those credentials. And finally, the 4th window is the authentication decision window.
That's the moment your legitimate site decides whether to allow or block a login attempt.
Exactly.
And here is the brutal truth we have to confront. Most enterprises are incredibly, almost exclusively focused on that fourth window.
Oh, heavily focused.
They have massive investments in login security, behavioral biometrics, and complex fraud engines that analyze the authentication request. But relying solely on that final window forces your systems to make decisions with fundamentally incomplete context.
Yes, if you only evaluate risk at the moment of login, you are treating the authentication attempt as if it is the beginning of the story.
That's not.
It is not the beginning. The 2025 ANUSA Threat Landscape Report makes this abundantly clear. Phishing remains the absolute primary method for initial intrusion across the board.
Right? For credential theft, session hijacking, you name it.
Exactly. That data proves that impersonation isn't just a scam targeting the public. It is the preparation layer for a targeted breach. The login is just the final, visible symptom of an infection that started hours or even days earlier.
So as a CISO, the question I need my team asking isn't just, is this login risky? It's, what happened to this user before they got to the login screen that changes how we evaluate it?
Precisely. Because if you wait until that final window and the attacker arrives with real credentials and a real OTP, your controls are flying completely blind.
They don't know the exposure history.
Nope, they don't know the device continuity is broken. They don't see the referral context. To the fraud engine, the login looks like an isolated normal access event.
And the stakes for missing those early windows are just massive for CISOs. Let's go back to that 2025 Department of Justice report you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, the Bang ATO case.
Right. That massive bank ATO fraud scheme wasn't utilizing some complex software vulnerability. It was a scheme involving fake search ads and spoofed banking experiences.
It generated over 5,100 complaints.
And more than $262 million in reported losses. Over $250 million lost. All starting from fake search ads that were probably just sitting in a low-priority takedown queue somewhere, waiting for legal to review them.
Yeah. That DOJ case study perfectly illustrates why timing matters. Yeah. That $262 million loss happened because the bank's security controls evaluated the risk at the point of account access rather than at the point of exposure.
Right.
By the time the fraudsters were logging in, they had everything they needed to look like legitimate customers.
But hold on, as a CISO, if I go to my compliance and privacy teams and say, hey, we need to track what our users are doing on third-party sites before they get to our login screen, I mean, I am going to get laughed out of the room.
Oh, for sure.
Are we talking about tracking users across the entire internet to build this context? Because that sounds like a privacy nightmare.
That is a very valid concern. But no, we are absolutely not talking about building a surveillance state or tracking users across the web.
Okay, phew.
This is about section correlation and asset telemetry. You don't track the user, you monitor the rogue assets.
Okay, break that down for me. How do we do that without tracking the user?
Well, when you detect a spoofed domain, or when your systems flag a website cloning attempt, you are identifying hostile infrastructure.
Right, the fake site itself.
Exactly. The goal is to connect the telemetry from those specific known bad impersonation events directly to your downstream account access risk.
Okay.
We are talking about connecting spoof domain detection directly to your fraud engine. Real-time phishing warnings, decoy credential use, unknown device logins, these are all discrete signals.
Oh, I see. So we are turning an external brand problem into internal identity telemetry.
That is the entire paradigm shift right there.
Yeah.
Brand protection workflows, SOC teams, fraud units, and digital risk departments can no longer operate in their own isolated silos.
They need to talk to each other.
They must share a single, unified operating picture. Brand impersonation has to be recognized as the upstream signal and account takeover as the downstream risk.
And this is specifically how Memcyco bridges this massive gap. It connects that external impersonation exposure directly to the downstream internal account access risk, and it does it in real time.
Yes. But I want to be clear about something. Memcyco doesn't just blindly treat every single impersonation event as a guaranteed ATO. Not every single fake site visit leads to a breach.
Right.
It provides the critically missing sequence. Detection quality doesn't just depend on having the signals. It depends on evaluating them in the exact order the attack unfolds.
So context is everything.
Exactly. Think about it. A customer visiting your site from a low-reputation referral link might not justify blocking their account on its own.
Sure.
An unknown device login happens all the time. People buy new phones, they travel. That alone doesn't prove a compromise.
Right. If we blocked every unrecognized device, our customer support lines would melt down.
But when a customer is exposed to a cloned website, and then their specific credentials are used from an unknown device, and it all happens in a linked sequence.
That is a massive glowing red flag.
Exactly. The sequence changes the entire context of the login.
Let me try an analogy here to see if I'm grasping the mechanics.
Okay, let's hear it.
So, traditional security is like a highly trained bouncer checking IDs at the door of an exclusive club. If the ID scans is valid, the bouncer lets you in.
Right.
But what Memcyco does is secretly plant an exploding die pack on the counterfeit tickets being handed out a mile down the road.
Oh, I love that.
Right. It's like we've had all the puzzle pieces, the low reputation referral here, the unknown device login there, but Memcyco gives us the picture on the front of the box so we can actually snap them together in real time. By the time the attacker gets to the bouncer, they are covered in bright blue dye.
Yes.
The bouncer doesn't need to overthink the ID. The person standing there is glowing blue.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Once you are able to see the blue dye, your entire security posture transforms. You aren't just reacting to fraud after the fact. You are preempting it. You are intervening in the critical space between the initial exposure and the credential reuse. You are cutting the chain.
So if a customer visits a fake site, Memcyco ensures that exposure doesn't just get logged into some slow administrative takedown queue that gets looked at on a Tuesday afternoon.
No, it becomes an immediate, high-fidelity account risk signal.
So when that specific user's credential pops up at the real, legitimate login screen, the system already knows it's compromised.
The fraud team doesn't have to guess if an OTP was intercepted because the system flagged the user the moment they interacted with the malicious proxy server.
Wow.
The brand team's work suddenly becomes real-time threat intelligence for the SOC. It really is a beautiful unification of efforts that empowers everyone involved.
It solves the core problem we identified at the very beginning of this deep dive. The murky, unmonitored space between brand protection and account security is no longer a blind spot.
Not anymore.
It becomes a fully monitored, fully actionable intelligence corridor. The attacker can no longer casually walk right through the space between the detour sign and the front door because we've lit up the entire pathway.
And if we connect all of this to the bigger picture for security leadership, I really want to leave our listeners with a final thought to mull over.
Let's hear it.
What if, instead of viewing every fake ad, every spoofed website, or every phishing lure as a brand nuisance that needs taking down,
Right.
what if you viewed it as a high-fidelity early warning radar?
Oh, wow.
The moment an impersonation asset goes live, it is not a headache. It is your earliest tactical advantage against the attacker.
That is an incredibly empowering way to look at the threat landscape. It turns the attacker's own infrastructure against them, using their fake sites as your early warning system.
Exactly.
Well, as Memcyco employees, we obviously love talking about this paradigm shift, and we are incredibly passionate about helping enterprise teams close this gap.
We really are.
We invite every CISO listening to book a demo to see the Memcyco solution actively connect these events and prevent ATO in real time for yourself. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive on the MemcycoFM show. And remember, the next time someone tries to sneak past the front door using a counterfeit detour sign, you'll be the one watching their every move.